Okay, on this video I'm going to show you how to do true 3D objects that you can actually bump up against or actually hit and move it, and also ones that have like images wrapped around the 3D object. Okay, so you can see right here there's a cone object here. I can't do nothing with it, but I can't move. And then you also see there's a column there that's kind of that's 3D. There's a column right there in the corner that's 3D. And then I also have a cone right there that's meshed up against on the column to make it look a different shape. So there's a cone there, and then there's a cylinder all meshed in one. And then you have a box here, metal box that you can actually move. And then you have this cylinder here that have a wraparound image. I'm going to show you how to do that. There's also a symbol around the cylinder there, but it doesn't, see, it wraps around. And see how it's 3D. It doesn't follow you. It's all different on all sides because it's true 3D. Alright, so let me show you how I did that. Okay, so we first start with the 3D cone here. It's just a this is like a placeholder pretty much. Width and height 16. X and Y are at 7, depth set minus 10, and I have it placed in the room right in these areas right here. These are the cones right here. The 3D cones. So I don't know why I have an alarm here. It shouldn't be an alarm set on these cones. I think I did have it set up where it does move at one point, but I decided not to make it move, so I just made it 0 for direction, speed 0. When you collide with, so you want to make sure it's collision with the object wall basics, which is what I talked about before. Object wall basics is going to be somewhere here. Object wall basics. So you do a draw event, and this is the code for the object wall basics. If this is basically if you collide with the wall, you're going to stop at it. That's what this code does pretty much. But like I said, this right here is geared toward the flat walls that look 3D, but they're not really 3D. But you would also parent that with the 3D cone, so that way you don't go through it. And at one point I had it set up where I did a move fixed speed of 0, then alarm, then when you bump against it, alarm set for 3 milliseconds, and then it would move. And I think that would work. Let me check it out. See how it moved? No, that didn't work. So just forget what I said about that. So make sure you want to take all this stuff out. I would just make it not move at all. Delete the alarms because that's not necessary. And then when you bump up against the cone, you want to make sure that you have your direction and speed 0, 0. Then you have your draw event, and this is the code for the 3D object. Now, I've talked about 3D in the past. It used a different 3D code, and that's why I couldn't locate it on my screen for some reason, because I was using a different type of code. This code works great. You can place your pink object, or whatever color object it is, your sprint indicator, down anywhere in the room, and it will be in that location when you go into it. My other code before, you place it down and it's not in the same area for some reason. So now you're able to, this basically tells the computer that it's going to be located where you place it at in the room, and it's also going to be tie in with the wall where it's going to be solid and you can't go through it. And that's what I had an issue with before with 3D objects, because I couldn't find it in the room, and you would go through the 3D object. So now you're able to find it in the room and you place it in the room, and you're also able to make it solid. But this basically, this code right here and these numbers here you can play around with, and basically it'll expand your cone or make it thinner. And then you have this background get texture. This is your texture for your cone. What you want the texture to be. Your cone, I want the cone to be a bricks wall. So yeah, basically this will when you place the image in the room, you know exactly where you placed it at. When you go in the room, it's right there. And then it's also, you got the X, Y, and Z coordinates. The Z is basically making it all 3D. So the X is going to be horizontal, the Y is going to be up and down, and you got the Z axis, which is going from top to bottom. So X is side to side, Y is up and down, but then you have the Z, which makes it truly 3D, and that goes from top to bottom. And this will actually make it where you can't go through it, the object wall. Make sure you tie it in with, parent it with object wall so you can't go through it. And then when you collide with the cone, make sure you have direction 0, speed 0, and then it's not going to move when you first start the room. So that Z basically makes it 3D. That you have the X, Y, and then the Z is the true 3D. You got to have all three alphabets in there for it to make it truly 3D. So you have X, Y, and then you got the Z axis. Now that is not highlighted in red, but it does make it 3D using this transformation 2D, 3D, D3D. And then you have your wraparound image. Okay, so that talks about the cone. Then I'm not talking about the circle right now because I'm still having issues with the circle. You still go through it for some reason, but the circle would more or less do it for the sky. So like in the second room, the sky is pretty much flat. You have several squares that are up on top for the ceiling, and I made it look like a sky. So you could take the flat image of the sky out and replace it with a dome sphere, but you got to make it real big, and then you add the image on top of that sphere. But I haven't figured that out yet. Alright, so then we have, see, the image with the column, and you have the triangle in there as well. So apparently you can mesh two 3D objects together and you don't have to go through it. So you can do it, you can mesh. See how you have the cylinder there, and you can add in the cone triangle on top of the cylinder, and so it basically collides together. The images mesh together, and then when you play the game, they're both solid for some reason. So you're able to move 3D objects inside of one another to make different types of objects, and then it's still it's 3D, and also you can't go through it, and it's solid. But just like here with the column here, I can go push that through the two flat images, and you only see part of the cylinder in the game. But when you try to hit up against it, it's solid. But when you put the object in the room here, you can go through it for some reason. It's kind of weird, but yeah, you can make different types of object with it. So like the cylinder here, I just make sure you parent it with object wall basics, which makes it solid, so you don't go through it. Do the draw event, and then the code right here is the same information. It's kind of the same information as I did the cone. This information is the same set identifier, so this is basically telling you where it's going to be out in the room. When you place it in the room, it's going to be in that location. And then you have this information here, which makes the object 3D. You have the X, Y, and Z coordinates, and then you have the cylinder, draw cylinder, which you can mess around with these numbers here, either higher or lower, and you can basically make it look more rounded, or you can make it more like an octagon shape. And then you add your texture for your cylinder. So I don't know if I can demonstrate here. If I change this number here to like 15, I want to see what happens. Okay, see now this shape right here looks more like an octagon shape. So if it changes back to 30, you just have to play around with the numbers to get it the way you want it. But because that's what I pretty much did here. So now it looks more rounded. See, it kind of looks more rounded a little bit. I don't know, still kind of octagon shape. Like I said, you just gotta mess with these numbers here, and you can change the shape of how the column looks. Okay, so it's messing with this one right here, of course. This one, see how it's making it shorter? So that number makes it shorter. This is the one in the back. It must be a different column. I'm not able to mess with that one. It's this corner column. So yeah, so you change these numbers, it makes it shorter. Then if you change the 8s to maybe like 5 or something, I would probably just mess with the blue numbers, not the black numbers like the Z. Just mess with the blue numbers here. So there's some shapes you can mess with within Game Maker. See, now it looks thinner, see? The column's thinner and looks more circular. It's more smooth. It's not so octagon shape. So it looks a little different now. You see more of the cone than you do the column up there now. So you just got to mess with those numbers, and you can change the shape of the column. So that is true 3D right there, because you have, like the Game Maker has a built-in You know, they have the column, they have the cone, they have the square, and they have the sphere. So you can mess with those four objects, those four 3D objects, and you can mesh them together, and you can make different types of objects with them. And let's see. You have the box here. So with the box, I did add some kind of, so on the box you can move it. So right here I have an alarm set to 3 milliseconds. Alarm 0 kicks in, and it's basically going to stop the box. So you can push it, and after 3 milliseconds it's going to stop. You move against the box again, and it pushes it for 3 milliseconds, and it stops. So that's what happens. And then like I said, the box is object wall basic, so it's solid. So when it hits up against an object that's solid, it's going to stop. And then direction, speed 0, 0. Then you have your draw event, and same concept here. The transform identity, so you know exactly where it's at when you drop it down in the room. Then you have your add 3D transformation, X, Y, and Z coordinates to make it truly 3D. Then you have your background texture, background 28, and then, like I said, this will, I'm not sure what this pretty much, I don't know what this really does. You can mess with these numbers if you want to, but these numbers right here, like I said, will change the size of the box. And then, like I said, the background 28 is this right here, see? And then it pretty much wraps around all sides of the box. Width 128, height 128, width 129, height 128. And then with the barrel, now the barrel is kind of set up a little different. Okay, so it's a cylinder, of course, and you have a background texture of background 29, identity and all. And I believe changing some of these numbers here will make the image wrap around once, not twice. Let's see, hold on. This is background 29, so background 29 is this. Now I had to basically, for some reason I had to rotate this upside down, because when I played it on the game, the image was upside down, so I had to, in order for it to be right side up in the game, you had to make the image upside down. So that's what's happening here. So its width is 350, height is 607, and then it's wrapped around. And I think what happened was I gave it a lot more space over here, and then a lot more space over here. That way I didn't have the image repeat several times around the whole barrel. That's why I have a lot more space here, a lot more space here, so that this triangle image does not keep repeating several times. It's only on it twice, once in the front and once in the back. And it does kind of look stretched in the game compared to what it looks like here. You probably could make this image longer, so then it maybe look less stretched in the game. So like I said, all this is the information is the same as what I talked about with the cone and the box. You're just changing the background image, and this information right here, I would just change the blue numbers, and you can make the barrel bigger or smaller or thinner. or taller or shorter. And then all this other information I've already talked about before, how it explodes, stuff like that. And make sure it's set up to wall basics so you're not going through it. And that's pretty much it. So I will give you this, you can download this Game Maker 8.1 and play around with the shapes and all. And that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about with 3D, through 3D. Like I said, you can, what you could do is, if you want to make like 3D weapons and stuff like that, I'm going to try, I might make a video on that, but it's going to basically talk about using Game Maker's shapes like the triangle, the cone, the square, and the sphere, and then basically put them all together on this screen right here to mesh them together and parent them all together so they don't come apart, and then you can use it as a weapon in your game, and it's all 3D. And I would suggest to open up a new project to do that, so you can play around with the numbers and then press the run game, and it'll run real quick, and you can see how they line up, all the squares, the triangles, and the cylinders, so it makes your 3D weapon. And each of those images, those, the 3D objects, you can put different images on them to make it look like a gun or something. But it's not the ideal way of doing it, but you could basically, download a 3D program and then import it into 3D into Game Maker. But I don't know exactly how to do that exactly. I have an idea, but I'm not going to go in depth with that. So I might do another video on how to do 3D guns using Game Maker's 3D objects, and then pretty much pairing them together and add different images to each object to make it look like a gun, and it's 3D, of course. And then you can use that in your game by importing it into your real game project. Alright, thanks for watching.